Nobody teaches you how to protect yourself. They teach you how to be polite, how to adjust, and how to stay agreeable even when something feels wrong. From an early age, you are taught that being easy to deal with is a virtue, and that discomfort should be swallowed quietly so others do not feel inconvenienced. And over time, that lesson costs you more than you realize. Boundaries are not walls meant to isolate you, and they are not acts of cruelty disguised as strength. Boundaries are the point where your life stops being owned by other people. If you do not draw that line yourself, someone else will eventually draw it for you, and they will place it exactly where it benefits them. This is not a conversation about being harsh or cold. This is a conversation about clarity, self-respect, and survival. Part 1. Why most people have no boundaries, as people believe boundaries are something you explain patiently until others finally understand. But that belief is built on a misunderstanding of human behavior. People usually understand your limits perfectly well. They simply do not respect them. The absence of boundaries often begins early, when saying no leads to conflict, disappointment, or withdrawal of affection. So you learn that compliance keeps things calm, and resistance creates tension. Over time, adaptability turns into self-erasure, and flexibility becomes a habit of ignoring your own discomfort. Not because you want to, but because you were conditioned to. You respond when you do not want to respond. You stay longer than you should, and you tolerate behavior that quietly drains you, all while telling yourself that this is just how life works. The truth is not that you are weak. The truth is that you were trained to put yourself last. Part 2. Boundaries do not create conflict. They reveal it. One of the most uncomfortable truths is that boundaries do not destroy relationships. They expose the ones that were built on access instead of respect. When you finally say no, you are not changing into someone else. You are simply stopping the performance that kept others comfortable. Healthy people adjust when you assert yourself. Unhealthy people react with anger, guilt, or manipulation. They say you have changed. They call you difficult, and they accuse you of being selfish. Not because they are confused, but because entitlement is losing access. If someone only values you when you are endlessly available, agreeable, and silent, they do not value you. They value control. Boundaries are the moment people show you who they really are. If you are paying attention. Part 3. Why explaining your boundaries makes them weaker. Many people believe clarity comes from explanation, so they over-justify every limit they set. But explanation invites negotiation, and negotiation erodes authority. When you say you cannot do something because you are tired, busy, overwhelmed, or stressed, what the other person hears is an opportunity to convince you otherwise. A boundary is not a debate, and it is not a courtroom where you must defend your reasoning. The more you explain, the more you train people to challenge your limits. Clear boundaries are calm, concise, and final. They do not rely on emotional packaging or moral defense. Silence after clarity is not weakness. It is strength. Part 4. What a real boundary sounds like. A real boundary does not sound aggressive or dramatic. It sounds decisive. It sounds like stating that you are not available for something, that a certain behavior is unacceptable, or that you will leave if a situation continues, and then meaning it. There is no anger in it, no pleading, and no apology attached, because a boundary is not trying to be liked. It prioritizes being respected, and the part most people avoid is follow-through, because a boundary without consequence is not a boundary at all. It is a suggestion. Part 5. The hidden cost of not having boundaries. People often believe boundaries create distance, but the absence of boundaries creates resentment, and resentment quietly poisons everything it touches. When limits are never stated, anger has nowhere to go, so it turns inward. And over time, you begin withdrawing emotionally without fully understanding why. You become passive-aggressive, chronically tired, and secretly fantasize about disappearing, all because you never allowed yourself to say one clear no. Without boundaries, life becomes a constant state of violation, and eventually, that violation feels self-inflicted. Part 6. Why people resist your boundaries. When you set boundaries, you disrupt a system that benefited others, and people rarely appreciate losing access they felt entitled to. They will test you, pretend not to understand, and push your limits repeatedly. Not out of confusion, but because they are checking whether you are serious. This is not a misunderstanding. It is a power struggle. The response is not escalation, explanation, or anger. The response is repetition, calmness, and consistency. The person who breaks first reveals who needed who more. Part 7. Boundaries come from identity, not confidence. Many people wait until they feel confident before setting boundaries. But confidence is not the prerequisite, it is the result. Boundaries come from identity, from knowing what you tolerate, what you refuse, and who you are when no one is watching. Even when asserting that identity feels uncomfortable, each boundary you enforce reinforces your self-respect, and each time you walk away, you strengthen your sense of self. Confidence follows action, not the other way around. Part 8. The loneliness phase. No one talks about. After you set boundaries, there is often a period of silence, a space where old connections fade and familiar noise disappears. This phase feels lonely, but it is not loss. It is clearance. You are removing relationships that required self-betrayal to survive, and making room for connections that do not demand you shrink. Peace feels empty before it feels free. Part 9. You do not need permission to protect yourself. You do not need trauma to justify boundaries, and you do not need to reach exhaustion to earn rest. You are allowed to protect yourself simply because your time is finite, and once it is gone, it never returns. Your energy is limited in ways most people never acknowledge, and every unnecessary obligation quietly drains something you will never fully recover, even if you pretend it does not matter. Your life is not a shared resource, not a public space, and not something that exists for endless access. Your life is yours, regardless of who disagrees. Boundaries are not requests, they are decisions. They are statements of ownership over your time, your energy, and your presence. And once that ownership is claimed, everything begins to change. The moment you set a real boundary, fear will surface. Not because you are wrong, but because you are no longer hiding. Let people misunderstand, let them leave, and let the silence grow. Clarity often feels lonely before it feels powerful. Boundaries are not meant to control others. They exist to prevent you from losing yourself. And once you understand that, you don't go back.